Mike, welcome. How's it going?
It's going great, Randy. Good to see you again, my friend.
Excellent. Great to see you. Really excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. I think we got a great topic to cover today.
Yes, very good. So everybody, this is episode 164 of Tech Sales Insights. Really excited to have Mike Norton, who's EVP of Seidl Enterprise. Our title topic is Frontline Sales Managers Really Run the Company, which could not be more true 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and today. So definitely look forward to getting into that. We are sponsored by, believe it or not, Seidl, who is the training partner sponsor of Sales Community. And for those that are members of Sales Community, thanks. For those that are not, Tucker will throw up a free link so you can join for free, salescommunity.com/springfree. And as always, we have Tucker behind the scenes here helping us. So thank you very much, Tucker. So by way of introduction, Mike lives in New Jersey in the by the shore, Manasquan. Is that how you pronounce it?
Manasquan.
Manasquan. And I totally vouch. He had his best sales call of his life was with his lovely wife, Kim. And they've got 3 kids in their 30s and 3 grandkids. So certainly exciting times there. And Seidl's, we've been together, I don't know, a year and a half or so. I need to go back and check, but certainly a fantastic company. I think everybody has great brand recognition going back, depending how long you've been in the industry, but, upwards of 30 plus years. Many of us were trained initially under the Seidl methodology. And I think for whatever reason, kind of has been out of sight, out of mind. But they're definitely considered to be the best in the industry. They've got amazing content that gets refreshed year after year. Mike will tell us more about it, and whether it's I call it I simplify their model, but kind of low cost online content or higher cost, high value face to face around so many different areas. They do so many great things. So we'll be getting into a little bit about that later. So by way of introduction, I've got some comments from some of your friends. Dave Matson, who's a longtime Seidl exec, says Mike is a lifelong learner, always looking to be the best he can possibly be. Michael was ahead of his time, creating a platform for sharing sales lessons from the great ones like Zig Ziglar, Tom Peters, Tom Hopkins, etc. He developed a SaaS platform prior to SaaS being a thing. What makes Michael great is he sells and leads without ego, is always curious, does the best thing for the other side, knowing that will serve him well also. The biggest things about Michael is that he's a great human that people trust. So pretty cool there. From Dan Stokes, who's a customer, CRO at Everag. Mike and Seidl have worked with Everag and its extremely mission-driven ecosystem to empower supply chains to feed a growing world. They provide great sales training to an ag tech company comprised of several acquisitions and serving multiple industry segments, which is no small task. But Mike and his team have empowered our sales organization to focus on customer outcomes that release and accelerate value. As a result, Everag sellers are building customer relationships and driving win-win sales campaigns. So you might have to grab that one for a testimonial.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
And Craig Dempster, who's the ringleader now for Seidl from Trilliad. Michael's a great leader, coach, and mentor. Michael is passionate about helping the people around him achieve their goals. Michael leads by example and doesn't shy away from a challenge. If you want to get some energy into your day, spend a few minutes with Michael. His passion and energy is infectious. So how's that?
Thank you, Craig. Yeah.
Oh, pretty good. But totally vouch, sincere, genuine, authentic. We're probably not allowed to talk about spirituality, but we're pretty violently aligned on spirituality and the important in life and several other areas. So anyway, so let's jump into the question. So you did not go to college. You actually enlisted in the Coast Guard.
United States Coast Guard. Served on the USCG Sea Chase out of Boston.
Wow. So that had to be a great experience.
It was a phenomenal experience. I actually wound up having my first two knee surgeries while I was in, so I could not re-enlist but that was the mission, was going to be career Coast Guard guy. And what does a career Coast Guard guy do when he can't re-enlist? He goes, finds a job in sales.
Yeah. Well, you actually you bought a 7-Up franchise first, right?
I did. I bought a 7-Up route here in New Jersey, and really loved doing that. And what that really taught me, I mean, that was my first real sales gig. And every day you were selling, every day. And think about the competition I had. I had 7-Up. We were the number 3 or number 4 player behind Coke and Pepsi. So every day was a battle of shelf space against Coke and Pepsi. So early on in my career, I really honed my sales skills by learning how to sell every day to the grocery managers and store managers. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So not that wasn't a corporate job, but kind of back on the corporate track. Then after that, then your first corporate job was at BioTrax as a rep, right?
That's right. Diagnostic imaging equipment. That's really where I started my corporate career. And actually, Randy, where I fell in love with sales training. I had a great manager there. His name was Dave Ulrich. He was all about continuous improvement. Our CEO at the time, Jerry Bruno, was also about continuous improvement. And that's where around that time, I was getting introduced to the likes of Zig Ziglar and Dennis Waitley and Tom Hopkins and Brian. I was a sponge for all of their content, and grew from sales rep to sales manager to being relocated from the New Jersey market out to Denver to open up the West for.
That's great. Did you ever have opportunity to meet or work with Zig Ziglar or Tom Peters or those guys?
Yeah. So when I left the company that I was with, BioTrax got acquired by National Medical Care, who then got acquired by Fresenius. And then they kind of did some different things with the company, closed down the Denver office. And I went to work for WebMD for about a year and a half. And I left there to start my own company called salesrepsonline.com. That's what Dave Mattson was referring to. Mm-hmm. I aggregated content. Before there was microlearning, or we even talked about it, Randy, I collected the works of all the greatest sales trainers and sales training companies at the time and chunked it down into little bites. There was no audio or video, just text. So Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins were my first guys. And once you had Zig Ziglar on board and you got or Tom Hopkins, and you called up the other training companies and authors like, hey, I'm working with Zig and Tom. Everybody was in, and we wound up building that company. We were partnered with Mark Benioff and Salesforce.com when they went live back in 99, 2000. And then Tom Seidl wound up buying our company because he created sales.com to compete with Salesforce.com because we were feeding that content up through the CRM system.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, Tom Seidl, I think, has that C3 AI as his main gig now. So the AI space. Wow, fascinating. Great opportunities there. So what about maybe your career? You covered part of it, but your impressive career from there?
So when we sold that company to Seidl, Zig Ziglar asked me to stay on with his son, Tom, and help build that company. So I actually, from 2001 through 2010, when Zig retired, I held different positions, started out just as a consultant, then VP of sales. And then in 2005, became the president of the company. So I was the president up until Zig retired around 2010. We had been talking with Sandler. We had a partnership with Sandler and Dave Mattson, because I had started another company called CanDoGo.com in the middle of that while I was running the Ziglar organization. It was a spinoff. It was a redo of SalesRepsOnline.com. When Oracle bought Seidl, it freed us up to do that again. And so Sandler, David Mattson, came in and shot like 125 short form videos for us. And David and I hit it off, immediately. And he said, when Zig is done, you're going to come over here and run enterprise, for me. And so left Ziglar on a Friday and put on the Sandler uniform that following Monday. And here I am.
Wow. Awesome. Very, very cool. So now Sandler, again, I take for granted everybody knows, but maybe just a brief description of the company now.
Yeah. So 225 training centers around the globe. We train over 500,000 hours of content a year. Over 31,000 students come through our training every year. Typically, our clients invite us in, Randy, because they're trying to get better at something. They're trying to increase something, improve something, expand something, or reduce something. And what does that mean? They're either trying to increase revenues, increase average deal size, net new logos. They're trying to improve margin or win-loss ratios or sales behaviors. They're trying to expand by getting better upsell, cross-sell, getting higher, wider, and deeper. or they're trying to reduce sales cycle time, increase deal velocity, reduce client attrition. So, when clients have those problems, they invite us in, and through our personal and data-driven development solutions, which is sales training, sales management training, and leadership training, customer service, strategic customer care, we serve the needs of our clients and help them achieve the results that they're looking for.
Awesome. And as I kind of alluded to, everybody thinks, oh, it's just going to be real expensive, on-site, pricey, but you can scale from, kind of do it yourself all the way up to kind of hold your hand.
Exactly. Asynchronous learning, come in and learn the Sandler IP. You can go through a series of virtual sessions. We've got open enrollment sessions where you're being with other clients. We have private cohort-based training. We have heavily customized solutions for somebody who really wants it to feel like it's their own program. And we have train the trainer programs. So anything you would expect from somebody like in our industry, there's like 5, maybe 6 companies who, we typically run into all the time and who are in this space.
Oh, awesome. And then what about your role?
So I head up our enterprise sales team. So I lead our sales team, it's good now. Like when I was from 2010 through 2019, I was running the entire enterprise side, and we just kept growing. And now we've got great leadership in account management. We have a client enablement team that's self-sufficient, and they're running that. So now my responsibilities are just limited to running the sales team and the BDR team, and we have a few independent contractors.
Yeah. So you've got an interesting model, right? Because you have there's the kind of franchise, you have Sandler, but then you have the franchise, and then you have your team, which is kind of I'll call it a direct sales team, for lack of better words.
Yeah, so it's a good call out because a lot of people don't know that. So we have 225 training centers. Those are franchise owned and operated. And there's about 400 trainers attached, a little over 400 trainers attached to those 225 training centers. And then we have our side, which is the enterprise side. Our franchisees typically focus on small to medium-sized business up to mid-market, and our enterprise team focuses from mid-market up through enterprise. So when one of our franchisees runs into an opportunity like a Salesforce or Oracle or Dell or somebody, they're going to call us and say, hey, we need your help, because we obviously can't, facilitate that across the globe.
Yeah, great. I went to your the impressive summit, Sandler Summit in Orlando, which is your big annual, kind of event. And it was just, massive, and just was so impressed with obviously all the people there, but then, so many people that really depend upon, Sandler for their training and the events. I mean, you had to be really happy with how that turned out.
Yeah. I mean, every year it just gets bigger and better. And this year's content, I thought, from the main stage and from the breakout sessions, was probably the best we've ever had. It really was great. Even, thank you, because you facilitated our Enterprise Day. You emceed our Enterprise Day, which was great. And we've got some great outtakes from that we'll be sharing with you. But I always say this about our summit. The content is great. The speakers are great. The breakout sessions were great. But when people come up to you at the cocktail hour or in between the sessions, and they're telling you how they use Sandler, and they're sharing their best practices with one another, even if somebody from manufacturing talked to somebody in tech and saying, hey, here's how we're enabling Sandler, here's how we're empowering our salespeople to use Sandler, and some of the great ideas that we get. So the ideation and idea sharing is really great.
Wow, that's awesome. So from your kind of go-to-market priorities for kind of the next year, any kind of one or two things in particular?
For us, it's all about data-driven development, right? It's what you said earlier about the inexpensive entry point to asynchronous, just access to online content. But it's really about understanding that we have the cohort training, which everybody does in the industry, but now we have a very unique way to identify the gaps through one of our partners, Octus, which is the Talent IQ assessment that we use. And we use that to understand where the gaps in learning are. And not only can we say, here's a heat map for where the cohort should focus their learning, but here's a heat map for where the individual and the courses that we would recommend to help them grow in their organization. We're also doing something that's completely disruptive to the market. We started something last year called collaborative learning. I mean, if you have a seat in Sandler Online, even if you paid just to get access to Sandler Online, every week we're running ad hoc programs that anybody who has a seat in Sandler Online can jump into. You might need help with questioning strategies, negotiating, communication skills, just motivation. And it's live, virtual. It's live. There's a live instructor in a virtual setting And people come from all walks. All of our customers come from all industries and walks of life to participate in that. So another way we're going to market.
Wow, awesome. And what about any one or two challenges?
Wow, that's a really loaded question, Randy. Right now, here's what's happening. So AI and ChatGPT, right? So you have some organizations thinking, hey, you know what? I can just ask ChatGPT to write me a sales training program. And we're seeing that. We're actually hearing it. I actually got an email first thing this morning from one of our trainers who actually heard it from a client that they're thinking about doing that. And that's just so risky. It's like you could give, I drive a Ford F-150, right? You can send me every part to a Ford F-150, send it to my house, give me a very clear user manual on how to build it. If I could get the thing to turn over, I don't know if you'd feel safe getting in my truck with me and driving down the road. It really takes somebody who's got the history to be able to tell the stories, be able to stand in front of a room, and when objections happen, because the magic doesn't, when you give somebody content, that's just knowledge transfer. If you're going to give them skill, you need to be able to role play that with command of that skill and that technique, right? You also need to know the psychology behind the why and the when and the how to pull that off. So, we're all hearing that in the industry. So that's one of the challenges. Here's the second challenge, and why we're excited maybe to be working with Joey Gilkey and his team is that lead gen is just it's hard, right? The spray and pray solution just isn't working. We're sending out, it doesn't matter how many sequences or cadences or calls you're making, we are flooding the market. You probably get hit all day long. I get hit all day long from people trying to sell me on LinkedIn, on my phone, in my email. It's just crazy, the noise that's out there. So how do you really differentiate? And that's why we're excited to be working with you in the sales community about really taking a more surgical approach to trying to get to our prospects.
Absolutely. So back in there, a couple of great shout outs. Tucker, if you want to maybe post their links, Octus, I assume it's octusiq.com, but they definitely have a few good offerings, and they partner with Sandler around Talent IQ, Sales Manager IQ, and there's a third one I'm forgetting about. But anyway, and then also Tucker for phone ready leads as well. Maybe you can post their links. But yeah, Joey does a great job there for sure.
And as far as going to market, Randy, and something that is working that I love, and I love this one, it's Humantic. Amberpreet's Humantic.ai. Every call, 10 minutes before my call, through my email, I get the personality style, the communication style of the people I'm going to be meeting with in advance of the call. And to me, that's just a huge home run. So I know a little bit more about who I'm dealing with before I jump on that call.
Yes. Yeah. And, for Humantic, it's the old disc profiles, but it's really kind of automated and on steroids and gets plugged right into your LinkedIn and is real easy to do.
Yep.
And then also anybody that's watching or listening, feel free to chime in with any comments or questions as we're going here as well. All right. So the title topic is Frontline Sales Managers Really Run the Company. Before we kind of drill into it, obviously I'm a huge fan of Violent Agreement on that, but kind of any intro comments?
Yeah. So when I think about sales managers, I think about my own journey through it, and now having worked with, hundreds and hundreds of companies and speaking to their sales managers. I mean, these are the hardest working individuals in business right now. They manage up, right? They've got to manage everything that's going up. They have to manage down through the organization. But they have to manage side to side. They have to manage marketing. They have to manage operations. They have to manage delivery, right? They have to manage those relationships so they can give their salespeople everything they need to be successful. So I call these guys the unsung heroes of, and I don't think we can overstate that, Randy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely very important, and also, to a certain degree, kind of the guardians of revenue.
They are the guardians of revenue, man. They are the architects of our sales strategy, right? They're the, I said this once before somewhere, they're the linchpins of cohesion in our organization. Because again, it's always, we'll just use ours. When you sell sales training, it's not just now we've sold sales training, we're going to send a trainer to your session. We've got an enablement team. We've got a client success team. We've got a marketing team. We've got an ops team. We've got a content development team, right? It takes a whole team to be able to make the magic happen for your organization. right? So, and that's every organization. And the sales manager is usually the person orchestrating all of that.
Yeah. And no matter how good you are, given all those different facets that you just touched on briefly, I mean, the work ethic and hours that are really required, kind of early and late on top of the workday is just massive, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially, back in the day, you had managers, sales leaders, they were area VPs, so they were kind of in the same time zone. But now with this remote workforce and with sales organizations so decentralized, I know I'm personally up very early in the morning, some mornings, and sometimes I'm up late at night talking to Australia, right? So, right. You in this role, you just work unusual hours.
Yeah. And then on top of that, to a certain degree, almost a shrink or a therapist as well.
Yeah, so you must know some. Yeah, you've met some of the people on my team. No, I'm just kidding. My team is awesome. But yeah, think about the roles over the years, and your salespeople are trying to make quota. And when your sales folks have, their funnel is weak, they're not making the income that they had hoped to make. All of a sudden, all this pressure comes in from the family, or
right.
just self-developed or they put the pressure on themselves. Now they start needing an outlet. Now you're talking about other things, and that's okay. Sometimes you need to be that, right? You need to be that person who kind of walks them through life. I know for me, Zig Ziglar was such a great mentor, for me, and watching him operate inside of our company as the personality who he was. He talked about being a 24-hour being. Like, it's not just your sales skills. Like, you need to have your healthy self-image, positive attitude, build winning relationships, have those winning relationships, set goals, live with hope. And when you have a salesperson who's really struggling, they may be struggling in one of those areas, and you got to kind of walk them through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Richard Harris, I don't know if you've ever met, but he's a friend and also a fellow advisory board member. But he's does a survey every year, the state of mental health and sales, and that's just so crucial these days, and something that gets so missed. But that's to the importance of therapist role. I mean, that first line manager is really the one, in there, and those that can kind of respect that and honor that and deal with that, probably do much better.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second, because we've always had a multi-generational workforce. We always have. I mean, there was always people coming out of university or exiting at some point, and everybody in between. But now, over this last decade or so, we've labeled them, right? We have the traditionalists, the boomers, the Gen X, the millennials, the Gen Y, the Gen Z, and now we know that they learn differently, they communicate differently, they consume information digitally and electronically, right? So when you have somebody who's maybe a little on the Gen X or boomer side, trying to manage somebody who is in a room taking, like, they looked at them on their phone, and I actually watched this happen really not too long ago. A kid was on his phone, actually a kid in his 20s, a salesperson on his phone in the middle of a meeting. And the manager actually looks over and says, "This is what I'm talking about." And the kid turns his phone around and says, "I'm taking notes. Like, this is how I take notes." Right. So we have to, when talking about being a therapist, we have to understand what, how they learn, how they communicate, how they consume information. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing that we have to deal with is that in that generational chasm somewhere, and we all talk about it, everybody got a trophy for doing nothing, right? All of a sudden this time came. So we see a lot of people now dealing with confidence issues. Like, how do you give your sellers confidence to compete in the world today, which is more competitive than it's ever been in every sector that we look at? The competition is huge. How do we give them that slight edge? And some of that is the attitude piece that we focus on.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a challenge, hard to deal with. There's a CEO friend that had a sales kickoff meeting, and he went to all the first line managers and said, "Okay, I want to have you highlight one person on your team, from a recognition perspective." And what ended up happening is most of the managers went through everybody on their team, and it just one of those things, different topic. But anyway, so in terms of some of the different types of sales managers that you identify, the administrator, the trainer, the superhero, the firefighter, the arsonist, the raging bull, all fascinating to talk about. So we'll kind of maybe go through each one. So the administrator.
Yeah. So the administrator, we've all seen, this person They love the CRM. They love CRM. They love pulling reports. They love building dashboards. They love just all the administrative work that goes behind it, right? That's just typically on the disk scale, we see them as the high C's, right? They like a lot of data, but unfortunately that means sometimes they'd rather do that work than be on the front lines with their sellers, like to be on the front with customers, right? They'd rather look at the data after. So they're going to look at the leading indicators, the lagging indicators, and all the data that comes out of it, but not be on the front lines. There's nothing wrong with being really good at your CRM. I mean, I talk about maniacal hygiene in your CRM, right? And you want to have all of that data. You want to know your business better than anybody else, but not at the expense of not being out there in front of the customer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what about the trainers?
Yeah, the training is, so you've got industry training, you've got product training, you've got sales training, right? You're time management training. As a sales manager, as a frontline leader, you've got to think about all of those things. But again, sometimes you fall in love with the training piece because you've been there, done that, and you want to show how smart you are as a trainer, that you know the industry so well. Again, you don't let them do the work. And that kind of leads to that next one where the superhero, where not only are you training, but you want to always fly in with the cape on and close the business and show that you still have the chops to win the business. When both of those cases, at some point, you have to let them do the work, right? Right. The other thing about training is, and this is where when we say sales managers, run the company, a really good sales manager, a really good frontline sales manager gets involved in the onboarding and crushes the onboarding. Like they help their salespeople accelerate success by getting them up to speed faster.
Yeah, I mean age old is the 30, 60, 90-day plan, and how many times these days does that not happen? But figuring out, okay, what it's not just the metrics around pipeline, but it's kind of all the different behaviors around the training, around the number of proposals, and number of sales calls, kind of everything that goes into that. And typically, for that onboarding, you're going to know within 60 to 90 days if somebody's going to be good or not. And if they're not, then you got to lean a little bit more in consulting and then manage them either up or out. And how many times does that not happen?
Too often. Sandler, we talk about hire slowly, fire quickly, right? Yeah. Because you're going to know in the first 30, not 30, but 90 to 120 to 150 days, you're going to know if they're going to make it or not.
Right. But how many times do companies not have the proper kind of tracking or communication or coaching around the development areas, and all of a sudden maybe somebody does deserve to get fired, and then all of a sudden they say, hey, nobody told me anything.
Right. And that happens quite a bit, right? We kind of grow over the top when it comes to onboarding. Yeah. We do weekly meetings. Dave Mattson, who's our CEO, still to this day, will meet with new hires every Monday and Wednesday and role play through scenarios that they're going through, right?
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so we covered the administrator, the trainer, the superhero. What about the firefighter?
Yeah, somebody who just, when there's problems between the different parts of the organization, ops, delivery, enablement, whatever it is, tech, IT, they like putting out the fires. Like, if a customer's got a problem, and this is again, all of these attributes are good when used in the right moderation. Like you have to have a little bit of all of it in you, but not to the detriment of doing everything else, right? So the firefighter is great to have, especially, my favorite firefighters are heroes, right? And what we want the hero of the story to be is always the prospect or the customer. They're the hero of their own story. So if a salesperson is engaged and they understand what the problem is, now the sales manager is getting involved also, and the sales manager just go that extra mile and fix that problem for the client and solve that problem, right? Be really, customer centric and focused. That's a good firefighter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what about the arsonist?
Yeah, that's the person that's the person starting the fires, right? They're the one that you don't want this attribute, right? You could say you can give it a little spark, start a little fire to get your team motivated and inspired. But when you're out there, torching relationships with your support teams, torching relationships with the other sales managers and peers that you have, and that's another thing that the sales manager is going side to side. is working with the other sales managers that are at their level, saying, what are your best practices? What are you doing for your team? Where I've met, sales managers at different outings, or we go to a training and there's a whole bunch of them there, and they'll start, that guy over there, all he does is cause trouble. All he does is stir the pot, and that guy is the arsonist. Right? And we don't want to be the arsonist unless it's that spark to keep somebody motivated.
All right, and how about the raging bull?
This is a good one, and this when I wrote about this one recently, is because I actually had a conversation with a sales manager, and he was saying his boss told him he was too nice. He said, you know how I know you're too nice? It's because nobody's going around you to come to me and complain about you. You need to be in their face. You need to be pissing them off. And I'm like, he didn't really say that to you. He goes, no, that's exactly what he said. He wants me to be tougher on my team, like be the raging bull. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's another one that doesn't make too much sense to me. Not in today's world. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the practical application of that obviously would be, setting expectations that are fair and holding people accountable to those expectations, but going overboard, like you said, is old school in a bad way.
Old school in a really bad way, right? Firm but fair. Definitely firm but fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so that covers the administrator, the trainer, the superhero, the firefighter, the arsonist, and the raging bull. But then being a coach mentor and coach leader also are critical. So maybe explain the coach mentor role.
Yeah, so you think about a coach, right? What does a coach do? A coach is giving you, strategy, right? Talking you through your plan. But a good coach asks really good questions. I'm going to put it back on you, Randy, right? What do you think you should do in this situation? Or what maybe could you have done in this situation? Like it's post the event, you're doing a debrief of a sales call. And maybe you were in that sales call with them as a sales leader or sales manager. Instead of just coming at them saying, here's what I would have done. Why didn't you do this? Hey, Randy, what could you have done maybe a little differently? What do you think next time? And again, Dave Mattson, taught me this years ago. It's, as a good coach, what are the 10 questions you're going to ask your seller when they come back from a sales call or get off a sales call? And maybe the first time maybe they'll know 2 of them. Then they'll come back from another sales call, and now they've got 4 of those questions. And you're telling them what the 10 questions are. But by the time they've done their 5th or 6th call and they have to come back to you and tell you how that call went, they're going to have all 10 data points, right? And that's a good coach. That's somebody coaching. The mentor is somebody like you. You're a great mentor. Like you've been in the roles, you've held the positions. So here's the analogy I use. I lived in Denver for a number of years. So when John Elway finally retired, right, but he became general manager and he was down on the sideline. John played the game and Hall of Fame career, right? Won 2 Super Bowls, played the game. John Fox at the time, who was the coach, right? He's the coach. He's helping play, he's coaching the game. But John Elway can be the guy who does say, hey, look, when I was in this 3rd down situation, when they were in this formation,
right,
here's what you might want to consider doing. Like that's a mentor, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And on practical application on sales calls, if you're the manager, leader, or executive, or whatever, you obviously can answer all the questions, but it's always good to kind of let the sales rep go. And not that you let them hang themselves, but a lot of times they're going to kind of falter, and it's good to catch them because that's the best way to have a coaching moment. You can always pick up the pieces and kind of put things right. But then afterwards, and you have the debrief and say, okay, did you see that? Because a lot of times, oh, I'm great, I can do everything, I know everything. Okay, well, did you see what happened there? And then another kind of real good practical thing I learned over the years was to say after a sales call, just say, hey, do you have any feedback for me? So if you're the rep, Mike, and I'm your, leader or manager, hey, Mike, do you have any feedback for me? Anything I could have done different or better? And a lot of times culturally, people have a hard time dealing with that because it doesn't happen, right? So then people get used to, okay, we're going to have Randy on calls. That's what we're going to expect. And then likewise, Randy's team and everything else. And then you can reciprocate to say, okay, well, thanks for the feedback, Mike. Appreciate it. Talk about it, whatever. Can I give you some feedback? So saying, can I give you some feedback is a nice way, a more pleasant way to kind of go at where you're going to be, potentially critiquing somebody. but then trying to figure out, that they all have that, try and get people to be open for the feedback to communicate, because way too many times people are just passive aggressive, I find.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And another one, I'll give a shout out to Gong and really any conversational intelligence tool that people are using out there. Because when you're a good coach mentor as a sales manager, and you do take the time to either listen to the calls, even without your rep, to get notes. If you're going to have a one-on-one, a best practice is to listen to those calls. Listen to it at 1.75, right? So it's going fast, but take your notes. But then taking the time to walk with your rep through those calls. So we do something really interesting with our team, Randy. Every week we have 1 or 2 reps willing to share a call. Like they will put themselves out there. They'll be vulnerable, and they will play their call with the whole. Well, if salespeople have a client meeting, they're not on it, but whoever can be on the call. We have people from different departments who listen in as well, and we listen to it. We stop it. Hey, what were you thinking there? Tell me more about why you asked that question. What's another question you could have asked? I mean, to just have the conversational intelligence tool and let it sit there and not be used is a huge waste of money. But to have it and to use it and use it effectively, it's a game changer for how you develop your people.
Yeah, especially where you can leverage in AI, you can put in different situations. So
we have Sandler trackers.
What's that?
We have Sandler trackers that are built into Gone, so we can actually say, are they doing upfront contract? Are they going for pain? Right?
Yeah. So like if I'll make it up, if you're a Dell and you want to figure out if you're competing against Pure or whoever, right? Kind of what are those situations, and in this situations where it's a good sales call where you win, or it's a bad call, kind of what are you able to draw out, and being able to have these managers leverage that, especially where they can't be on all sales calls at all times, just totally invaluable. And then the unique way that Sandler can plug into Gong as well is amazing, as you just mentioned.
Yep.
Very, very cool. All right. So we talk about coach mentor. What about coach leader?
So, again, coaching being the key word, right? But as a coach leader, this is where you really have to put it on think about the attributes of a good leader, right? Empathy, vision, accountability, ownership, character, right? When you think of somebody who's a good leader, those are kind of the qualities. Driven, right? Not afraid to make decisions, right? Leads as a good leader. When you're a coach, when you're in the frontline sales manager, and you want to be a good coach leader, how is your team seeing? And you kind of touched on this a little bit ago when you said, hey, what can I do better as your leader? Like in those sales calls when I'm on there with you. And so a good coach leader for me is somebody who takes the time to invest in their people, and not just about the business. Like when you start your conversation off in a one-on-one, is your first question, all right, let's open up, your CRM, let's go through your funnel. No, your first question is going to be, how you doing? How's your family? What's going on? Making it really personal about them, making sure because the old saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It sounds like a really nice platitude. By the way, that was Teddy Roosevelt who said that the first time. Zig Ziglar actually added to it. And so now the quote is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. So when your sellers know that you actually care about them as a person, right? Now you're showing true signs of a leader.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. And also too, just the basic, leading by example, right? So if you're that administrator behind the screen and not doing anything, then that's what the reps are going to do, right? So if you're out there in sales calls, and the best way I'd say to combine the leader and the mentor is, for those that can go out and face-to-face sales calls, that windshield time, right? Where you can have all these discussions, where you can mentor, where you can lead, where you can get feedback, you can give feedback.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have a new seller on our team. She's been here for about 4 or 5 months, and I had a one-on-one with her this morning, right before our time together here. And she said to me, "Hey, I have this call coming up. I've had this call twice already with this prospect. I would really like I want to hear you overcome this objection on this call. Would you mind, role playing that with me? But then I want to see you do it with the client or with the prospect." I'm like, of course. I mean, that's, happy to do that. So another good trait of a leader, a coach leader, is taking the time to pre-call plan and go and know what your role is before you go in there. Because I'm sure you've experienced this. I know I have. You get into a sales call and the prospect starts getting back and forth, and all of a sudden the salesperson kind of gets stuck, and they're just looking at you, hoping you're going to jump in and rescue them and say something smart, right? And but if you take the time to pre-call plan that and anticipate, hey, when these 3 objections come up, I'll handle these 2, you handle that one. When these 3 questions come up, I'll handle this one, you handle those 2, right?
Yeah, totally. And then another thing that comes into play here is kind of the cadence and how you do that. And I think you have several best practices there. Yeah.
So our week, we're a very high touch organization on our sales folks. So Mondays we do what we call win room, and a lot of companies we work with, we've shared this cadence and they've adopted it. I'm happy to anybody on this call who might be watching or listening, if you want to know more about it. But on Mondays we do something called the win room. So again, somebody comes in and brings a deal in. And again, going back to the Octus guys, we use Deal IQ.
Right? Deal IQ, that was the third one I couldn't think of before. Yeah.
Deal scoring, deal acceleration tool, integrates with HubSpot, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, any CRM. So it pulls the data across, and it's got 7 imperatives that you have to know. And then it takes your sales stage, whatever it is, the sales stages that you follow, your gate selling. And as you're clicking each box that says, I've completed this, it scores your deal. It's phenomenal. We use it all the time. But so Mondays, we have a win room. And 1 or 2 reps will come in and bring their deal of being vulnerable. Here's where I am on my deal. And the whole team gets to weigh in on what is a good strategy going forward to advance that deal. And they all learn from one another. As we ask the questions, we go through the 7 imperatives and we go through the different deal stages, and it never gets old. It never gets old for the team because every deal is always different. So that's on Mondays. On Tuesdays, we do the Gong film review. So we get on and we listen to Gong and we listen to the calls and we give each other guidance and advice. Thursdays, we have our normal team meeting, right? So we have an hour team meeting where we go over pipeline, things happening in the company, upcoming events. We usually have a partner on. So sometimes Octus, sometimes Influence Board, sometimes Humantic. Gong has come on the calls. That's just what every sales organization does, your weekly sales meeting. Then on Fridays is the best day of the 4 of our cadence each week. We do role play Fridays. And you think your team doesn't want to role play. But when you get in the habit of this, when you make this part of your weekly, this is just what happens, and you give them the topic in advance to prepare for it. We actually started having competitions, like chopped competitions, having 3 people role play a quick scenario, vote, we chop 1 off, and then we have 2 left, and we pick a winner. But that practice, those at bats, are priceless for the sellers. Even our sellers who've been around for a really long time, who've been in this industry for 12 years, 15 years, they're there every Friday. And I'm watching them take notes when other people are role playing. It's just a really good way. We talk about in Sandler here, how do you equip the modern buyer or the modern salesperson to meet the modern buyer in today's tight competitive landscape? How do you give them that slight edge? And role playing is one of those ways.
Yeah. Then I know in your Thursday afternoon, all kind of your team meetings too, you kind of do a round robin with having different team members lead that as well, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Which makes, and we have them all, we have a team leader who do it. I don't do it every week. Every one of those things I just mentioned, somebody's in charge of running that. We pick a team member to do that. So now they have to prepare for it, right? And it just holds everybody accountable and makes everybody feel like part of a team.
Awesome. Love it. So I have to ask though, how, given that I love the cadence, but then that kind of takes away from what I'll call kind of revenue generating time when they could be doing sales calls, right? So there's a trade-off there.
There is a trade-off there. And, just the nature of our business, we don't have that many calls where they're not like, and our BDRs are different. And our BDRs do jump on as many of those calls as they possibly can, because they're learning too. But, for them to invest the time in themselves, it just makes them that much better for the next call. So I'd rather take that time away from having them, using that as selling time to make the next sales call they're on much more effective and increase my win rate by giving them the tools and the skills. And we work on behaviors and attitudes all the time. So again, that's slight edge. We have to give our sellers a slight edge in this. What is it? So what's the stat, Randy? It's like 70% of the decisions already been made by the time people look at, a solution. They've already done all their research. So now we're all fighting for only 30%. What's left of that 70%? Right. So we're all fighting for 30%. We need every slight edge we can possibly give our sellers.
Yeah, totally. How many, do you have an expectation of number of sales calls that your sellers do?
Yeah, we call it at Sandler a cookbook. So everybody's got a cookbook with number of calls, emails, follow-up, LinkedIn activity. The whole thing. Yep.
Awesome. All right. So we have a question from Jackson. Thank you, Jackson. So again, as a reminder, those watching or listening, feel free to make comments or other questions as well. Where do you see companies make mistakes when supporting frontline leaders?
That's a good one, Jackson. So I think, sometimes when I look at it, Randy, I don't know where you in your journey through this, but sometimes I think it's initiative overload. Like they get so many things thrown at them. It's like I said earlier, they're managing up, they're managing down, they're managing side to side, right? They're managing all their peers and they're managing the other departments. And there's just so much going on that they don't get the proper support while they're going through all those initiatives. So a less is more approach, right?
Yep, absolutely. And Jackson, if you have a perspective also to add to that, feel free. So what about any mentors that you've had, kind of one or two, with any specific advice that you've received?
So, there's so many, and the four I always hold up, Randy, obviously Zig Ziglar, having been a student first, listening to all his programs, reading all his books, and then going to all his seminars, and then working with him for 12 years, learned so very much from him. And I'll give you a quick lesson from these four. So Zig Ziglar, he talked about your reputation is what you've done. Your character is who you are. And watching him for 12 years, as closely as I did, he was the most consistent guy I've ever seen in my life. And he would call it persistent consistency. Uh-huh. His preparation before he went out on stage was, and he might have done the same talk 100 times in a row. 100 times in a row, he got 3 hours before the event, went through every one of his notes and practiced it and rehearsed it. I actually asked him one time, well, I'm like, Zig, we've just done this same talk, like, how many times? And he said, yeah, but Michael, the audience out there, this is the first time they're seeing it, and I owe it to them to be prepared. So being prepared, going that extra mile, is from Zig. David Sandler was so far ahead of his time. I never met David Sandler, so the only thing I could say about him is, what I've learned directly from Dave Mattson and so many of our franchisees who have passed along, the knowledge. But when you think about what he created, and David Sandler actually said this on a recording. He said, guys like Zig Ziglar and Tommy Hopkins, they did a great job with question. They did. That's a great idea. Ask questions. Ask the right questions. He said, I introduced pain. I introduced the pain funnel and how to work through the pain funnel. And that was a career changer. That and the upfront contract that Sandler trains to, those two things were game changers. The third one would be Dr. Dennis Waitley. Do you remember the name Dennis Waitley?
No.
So contemporary of Zig's, never made it quite to that, same status, but it wrote a ton of books. And Dennis became a really good friend of ours. And he wrote the book called Psychology of Winning. And he talked in there about the expectation to win, right? We have to expect to win. And he called it positive self-expectancy. If you go into any situation thinking you're going to lose, why go? And he said, especially as a salesperson, there's positive self-expectancy. Do everything you can to prepare to win, plan to win, but you have to expect to win.
Yep.
And so my whole life has been, and I learned this from him back in the 90s, So it's always like when I do anything, I'm expecting to win, right? Until you prove me wrong, I'm going to go in and expecting to win.
Yeah. So earlier you'd mentioned pain. So with the med pick, process qualifying, it's a great framework, but I've seen Sandler get very the add huge value to those friends who say, oh, we use MedPick and we're great. We don't need Sandler. Address that.
Yeah, so MedPick, and again, I remember when MedPick was just Medic, and I loved it. I think it is a great framework. It's awesome. Where Sandler comes in, where we've worked with organizations who said, look, we took MedPick, or now MedPick, and we're not getting any adoption. They know what to do, but they're just not doing it. And we hear that over and over again. And more than 55% of our business is in tech. So that we hear this quite a bit.
Right.
So, as we said, MedPick is a great what to do. Sandler, because we're human psychology and research and science backed, we really focus on not only what to do, but why to do it, when to do it, and the strategic and tactical how to do it. So we actually say, here's how MedPick aligns with Sandler, and here's how you actually pull it off. So we have lots of organizations who don't want to throw MedPick out because they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They want to keep and embrace some of the phraseology that they're doing, but they want to actually have it work. So Sandler comes in and complements that.
Yeah, awesome. Really, really good. So as we're almost at time here, for those that I know, I like to ask if there's any PG Randy story to share.
So PG Randy story, I'll go back to one, and I think you've heard me say this one before about you. But when I first met you, we met in Beaver Creek at your in-laws' house, and I walked in and you were on a business call, and we had a couple of calls leading up to that, and you were all business. So in my head, I've been trained to diagnose, DISC, right? I wasn't using Humantic at the time. And I'm like, this guy's a high D. This guy's going to be a super high D. And as Kim and I were waiting in your kitchen while you were on the call, and I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, this guy's definitely a high D. And we went and skied, and we're skiing in this area, and you were kind enough to ski. We went up to a green area to kind of start and get Kim warmed up on there. And one time, a little kid fell down in front of you, and you stopped and picked him up. And I'm like, oh, man, he's a D, but he's got a good heart. And then we're skiing again, and a little kid dropped his pole in the tree. Like he went into the trees and dropped his pole. You skied in after him and picked up his pole for him and took it out. I'm like, wow, this guy is like, if I'm going to look on and this is a very rare combination when you get a D and an S, because they're like the pole dominant and driven versus, slow to change, loyal, steady. But then you look at those traits with you and the community you've built here at the sales community, and how many people now that I've met through you and the stories that they tell. So your loyalty, like you're like a true DS on the scale. So they're just watching you in that natural environment, picking kids up, and was pretty cool.
There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it. A lot of times I get overjudged, I think, because it's, big and bald and whatever. Like, oh my, yeah.
You're a big old softy, man.
I know. That's what my friends say. Yeah. So anyway, all right. I appreciate that. So you've been awesome. Tons of great content here. I think we should kind of repost and have some ideas. I think we could leverage a little bit more. Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Next week, we have Craig Irons from Meter, who's going to be talking about the transitioning of subscription to usage-based pricing, which I know will be definitely interesting and something a lot of people are still working through with their models. So, Mike, stay on after we cut off here. Thanks to Sandler for sponsoring. Definitely something that is not a nice to have, but definitely a must to have. So if you're not already engaged with Sandler, get engaged, and we are totally happy to help. You can reach out to me or Michael. So everybody have a great week, and feel free to share as this gets reposted everywhere.